Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and we have a powerful and I think inspiring episode for you here today. We're also going to be challenging something that you may or may not feel like looking at right now, which is the common use of alcohol in our lives. And me and my guest are both on a train of having given up alcohol use in our lives. And so we're going to try to not stand on a soapbox of empowerment, but just discuss what that's like. And she's an expert on this topic. So hang tight real quick. We'll be right back.
It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur.
Awesome. So Mary Wagstaff is a holistic alcohol coach for women. She is radicalizing what it means to live alcohol-free through the lens of women's empowerment for the aquarian age, when not drinking becomes the obvious choice to seek long-lasting joy and gain more access to our innate superpowers of emotion, humanity, and divinity. She is helping women around the world evolve, heal, and awaken from alcohol by way of their innate wisdom and relationship to self. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Oh my gosh, Molly, I'm so excited to be here. And I'm just so excited for you too, and to be sharing this journey with you, because it really is an empowering journey. And it's hard for me to not stand on my soapbox sometimes, because I'm like, you have to join us, come up here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I've had this thought a lot recently, and I've meant to post about it. I think I've probably posted about it from time to time when I was hitting some benchmark for my own sobriety from alcohol. But the common use, like how freaking normal it is for people to drink and get drunk, and not just like have a glass of wine, but like, at least in the communities that I've spent a lot of my years in early adulthood with, it's really, really normal to drink to get drunk, and to let that be like a huge part of your life. And in my experience of getting away from alcohol, it takes 3 days before I really feel like I'm back at my vibrancy. And so if people are drinking every weekend, and then, you know, you get back almost to your full like frequency, and then you just drink again the next weekend, it's almost like we're hanging out in a depressed as in energetically untrodden, so to speak, way, kind of all the time, which is a lot. And yeah, it just blows my mind sometimes that we are so up and coming with this conversation of mental health and about self-care and about like doing things that raise your frequency and being your best self, when alcohol is still like such a normal component that's impacting us all the time. And it's so easy to not notice that when we're in the thick of it. So I guess I'm curious, would you be willing to share sort of your journey with it and out of it to just get us started?
Well, kind of just to go on that tip a little bit, is systems and institutions always are much slower to change than the human evolves. So I've found it that it's not as useful to look at, you know, because this is an old thing, right? Alcohol has been around since the dawn of time. And it's also big money. And with that comes this really beautiful interweaving of your emotions and marketing, which alcohol is a really beautiful opportunity to play on all of them, the good times, the bad times, and everything in between. And the normal drinking, you know, I even look at like, I don't really even care if you're getting just drunk on the weekends, but if you're having even a drink every night, there is going to be an emotional habit, right? And the way that I kind of define this for people is, drinking doesn't make you good or bad. It's just about, are you getting the results that you want in life, right? You're a grown-ass adult. You can do whatever you want. Do you like the results you're getting? And if you say no to a drink, does that create resistance for you, right? And that's where I think that we kind of are like, oh, I have a avatar called Deb. And it's like, oh, I'm not as bad as Deb, right? Like Deb's over there, like, to going home with all the dudes every weekend. Like, I'm not as bad as her. So we always find these ways to justify it and, and compromise with ourselves and bargain with ourselves and compensate, right? So this kind of can segue into my journey. I was on a journey of holistic wellness as an educator and practitioner for 20 years, living a parallel life as an almost daily drinker, except for a short stint when I had my son for 9 months. But during that whole time, it would have been a beautiful opportunity for me to change my relationship to alcohol, which I had really wanted to do since I started drinking in some form or another. Like, there was always times where it just didn't align. But although I really enjoyed my pregnancy and there was like amazing benefits from not drinking, my mindset wasn't there. I still had the same beliefs that alcohol was amazing. It was important. It was normal. It was my source of fun. And like, I went right back to drinking afterwards, which, everything is like its own path. So I just got to a point, so much of it, Molly, I just feel like is natural maturation, like, especially if you're on a spiritual path, if you're doing work of self-inquiry and other things that are going to be raising your vibration. Like, I mean, I've been practicing yoga for longer now than I was drinking, which I love to say. Mm-hmm. And so like it's just so, and this is how deeply ingrained and entrenched the societal beliefs are interwoven on top of the habit, and also what it means to quit, right? So in my program, I don't use labels. I don't use counting days. Like I said, I just know the only requirement is that you want to change, is that you don't like the results you're getting. And like, you don't go from a drinker to being a sober person. Like, that label isn't required. And because there's only really been one mode of finding a new relationship to alcohol, which traditionally we look at the 12-step or AA model for a lot of people, they don't really resonate with that too, because what they really want is to just be a healthier version of themselves. They want to live a life where their potential isn't stifled in any way. And like you had expressed, you're going in this emotional roller coaster, and you're never kind of getting to a place where you can exceed, because you're kind of always cleaning up and making up from those weekends or from every day. And it kills your confidence. It puts holes in your auric field. It messes with all of our hormones and our nervous system. And it really wreaks havoc on every system of the body, not to mention the disconnection between your higher self and your access to your emotions and your human experience. Like, emotions are very much a part of our human experience. It's kind of what makes us human. And so if we don't have full access to observing those as an experience, and we're always just looking at the state that we're in as a problem, that it needs to be altered, whether it can be heightened or we're stressed and that needs to be taken away, then we're really doing ourselves a disservice of like why we're here, if we are always trying to alter really what is just a miracle. And that's kind of how I look at it. Like, you can't alter a miracle. And if you continue to try to, you're always going to fall short. And I think that's why so many people now are just really feeling into, as we awaken consciously into this next age of human evolution, it's like, yeah, alcohol is just not really the vibe anymore for where we're going as a species. So,
yeah. And I love that that's catching on and becoming normal. Yeah. And I feel like in some ways, I mean, lots of the people that I know who used to be heavy drinkers like myself have also started shifting away from it. And I think it's just a sign of like, we are growing, we are consciously evolving, we are starting to become willing to learn to have that resilience that we used to use substances to numb with. And that if we aren't numbing with a substance, we have to actually feel the feelings that show up and navigate our lives from that place of like higher just awareness of what's going on, because we don't have that sort of filter of that substance playing on the game that we're playing, this life that we're living. So it's awesome. I love the way that it's shifting. And I know that some people are still entrenched in some of those societal programming and also just personal patterns with this kind of substance. So what are some of the first things to look at if people are feeling nervous of like, I don't want to give it up, or like how to sort of encourage that experimentation with themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's much more simple than you think. It's really just a shift of perspective. The first thing is to kind of just look at the facts, right? It's really just a beverage choice. And something that I think is funny, like what on the other side of it, when you look at it, it's like, I wouldn't sit down and drink 6 kombuchas or like soda waters or any amount of something large in one sitting. Yet we're just sitting around like chugging beers, chugging wine, like drinking this excessive amount, right? So first of all, you could just kind of look at that as like, there's like, I'm just excessively drinking beverages. And I kind of just like to look at the facts and what they are from a neutral place. And so if anyone that's listening has done any sort of mindfulness practice, like yoga or meditation or anything like that, that is the first place before you even think about taking your last sip, is really coming into the witness consciousness, is starting to observe your relationship to alcohol and yourself through the lens of the witness and through curiosity. So most of the time, a lot of times when people are ready to make this shift or they're scared, there's some sort of battle in their mind, right? It's like, do I, don't I want to, but I don't. And really it's about kind of shifting that conversation and neutralizing it, and taking a step out of the mind and watching it, and just watching the thoughts and being curious about them, and then bringing in a little bit of compassion and understanding. So I like to, it's like if you were having an argument with someone and you're trying to prove your point, right? This is what's happening in our head most days, all day. You're trying to prove your point. They're trying to prove their point. And all of a sudden they say, you know what? I see that you're really passionate about this. I care about you a lot. And I just want to understand, like, I'm here for you. Let's just sit down. I'm going to hold your hand. You can feel however you need to feel. I'm going to be here with you and I'm not going anywhere. You're not going to continue arguing with this person. And that's really essentially what we need to do with our own inner dialogue, is seek to understand and validate. And so those are the first 2 steps that I really have my clients do, is come at their relationship to alcohol from curiosity and compassion, because we're having a conversation with ourselves all day, every day. It's just that it's on repeat, and it's usually leaning about 80% towards the negative. So you can also see why we want to drink, because most of our thoughts are habitually negative. This is just biological. This is evolutionary. But when you start to notice them, most of our thoughts are just opinions. We don't think in facts. So we can also see too that a lot of the reasons that we are drinking are based on the ways that we're interpreting the world, that are causing stress, that are causing judgment, that are causing anxiety. And we can also start to shift those perspectives and really also change our emotions and just like live more happy, peaceful lives from every angle.
I love that idea of pausing the conversation you're having with yourself in your head and just switching it to compassion. It's like we talk about self-compassion, but actually saying to yourself, like, I hear you. Like, that's a valid feeling. That's I get that thought. And, is that thought something that's bringing me the results I desire? Or, can I just sit here and feel this with you and hear it from you? Like, what a different way of interacting with that inner voice and that inner dialogue. That's just lights me up.
Yeah, it's very powerful. I call it a sacred timeout. It's like when your brain won't shut up. It's like, get your little booty on the ground, sit, let it just, you're going to want to justify it and say, but, and just let it do its thing. And, our thoughts are no different than the phone that you're holding, right? And so if we can just look at our thoughts like an object and our emotions like an object and just be in the witnessing of them, we will start to notice more, wow, some things, I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Singer from who wrote The Untethered Soul. It's like what things come and bump up against my insides and what things don't. And why? What am I making them mean about me? And alcohol works the same on every human brain with frequency and duration. People get addicted to alcohol. I really like to neutralize the word addiction, because we're all addicted to stuff, and it's just silly to make it mean something more than it is. Humans get addicted to stuff. That's how we learn. That's why the brain is an amazing brain. It's super efficient. Getting addicted or having a habit with alcohol, however you want to term it, is very normal with frequency and duration. You could binge drink on the weekends, you could drink a little bit every day. It doesn't really matter, but it's going to form some habitual patterning. So that's a biological response that you're not really in control of once it starts to happen. And it happens really quickly. Like alcohol is a really strong drug. And that's the other thing that we have to think about with this normalized in society. Like, I think drugs should just be legal. I don't think we should really control people from doing anything that they want to with their lives, but, depending on how it affects other people. However, we have a bunch of stigma around other drugs. But then we're like, yeah, like, let's just, party on. So just knowing that this is a normal biological response from ingesting a mind altering substance that creates a strong pleasure response in my body. And it happens very quickly. It happens very quickly that I have a stimulus or a circumstance, and my brain goes from A to drinking very quickly. It's very efficient. So I think having that knowledge for knowledge sake too is another thing you can tell yourself, like, yeah, you're going to feel a little weird not drinking at first. That's normal. You're in reality now. And like, life is frankly more of a trip than some of the stronger hallucinogenics I've tried. It's like, when you really think about life, it's like, well, it's pretty fucking crazy. Yeah. So that's another thing too, is just like facts, knowledge for knowledge sake. Get super objective, super curious, and stop taking your thoughts so damn seriously, because they're really like not helping you out most of the time.
Most of the time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it is, when I was still a regular drinker, it started for me by trying like No Booze November, where I was like, I'm just not going to drink for a month. And finding by the end of that month, I was like more full of joy and like excited about my life than ever before. I mean, like, well, month's over, like, celebrate. But those little breaks, it was almost more uncomfortable for other people to be around someone not drinking when they're all still in the throes of drinking than it was actually uncomfortable for me at the moment. So I would bring, kombucha to the house party, or bring, a case of my favorite LaCroix over to somebody's house for dinner, and set myself up to not feel awkward not having a beverage, because that's there's sort of a physical component to it too, of like, I'm standing here without a drink. What do I do with my hands?
Yeah, totally.
And finding there are ways to make yourself feel more comfortable. And if you have a drink in your hand, less people are going to try and offer you a drink, which makes that a little bit easier too. And I mean, I travel around by myself, so I still love going and playing pool at bars sometimes. And I just get a club soda, and then nobody tries to offer me a drink because I have one right there. So those are some little strategies, but yeah, just getting comfortable doing something different than you've done before. It's gonna be uncomfortable at first.
And it's it's like looking at what you're saying yes to, right? So much is like that fear of missing out, right? And again, when you kind of just get down to the facts, it's like, what are you really missing out on? And this is one of the other kind of a little bit of the old paradigm of changing your relationship to alcohol from the kind of quote unquote alcoholic model, which I don't really subscribe to either. And there's a whole spectrum of use and dependency. So that's a whole nother topic, but is change your people, change your places. And when we try to change in any scenario, when we try to change the circumstance to change how we feel inside, you're going to be fighting the rest of your life. But if you can change your beliefs, your thoughts, your emotions, it's going to be a much easier time, because that's truly all we ever have control of. We don't have control of the alcohol industry. We don't have control of diet culture. We don't really have control of politics, right? So it's like we fight these endless battles where we can change our inside, be the example, lead by example, right? Like, I'm sure you engage with so many people in a social way, and, in some party environments as well. And like, that was the thing I decided to do too, is I was like, I'm not changing. Some things changed naturally because they weren't satisfying anymore. Like, there's definitely some places that I would not go to that I like used to hang out at. And I'm like, why did I go there? Gross. But they're like, you get to decide what you want that to be. And one of my mottos early on in my journey was throw a better party. Like, I'm going to throw a way better party than booze ever would, because like you just expressed, I can go to a bar, I can go play pool, I can hang out with my friends. There's literally nothing about that circumstance that's changing besides what's happening inside of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And all that's happening inside of your mind is you're inhibiting or removing the thoughts, that may be creating some negative emotion anyway. So whatever thoughts you're thinking that are creating the fear of missing out, well, what are those thoughts? And then think thoughts that make you feel included. These are my friends. I know this place. I love this place. So it always comes down to the connection. Your emotions are always correlated to the thoughts you're thinking about yourself. So if you think I'm left out, I'm missing out, well, then just think the opposite of those, because those are just opinions. And if you're there, then chances are that you're included. And the thing that you have in common with people is that you're friends and you're playing pool together.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like our thoughts just want to create a story. And then that story reinforces the need for alcohol. And it's just at the beginning, I think it's really useful to examine and really dismantle and disprove all of the thoughts that get a drink in your hand. Because most of them, like, again, aren't true. So I love that you're doing that. I love that you're out having fun. And it does make people uncomfortable because we're all mirrors of each other. And so you're just one facet of the whole, and it helps, and it's like a reflection of someone in their own inner landscape and their own subconscious work that they're not doing.
Why are they not drinking? Why am I still drinking? Yeah. And I think it's a natural progression that when you're not impaired by the substance, you might notice that certain groups of people or certain places that you hang out really don't resonate with who you want to be in the world now, because now you're aware of more of who you are, more of how you want to show up, more of what you desire to create, the results you want to get. And it might become more apparent that certain people just aren't going to go there with you. And so it's okay for your social circles to evolve with you as you choose to change your life.
Absolutely.
And that's just organically kind of naturally going to happen, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that if we don't allow that change to happen, I think that's just another story, right? It's like there's the saying, a reason, a season, a lifetime. And there's people that we meet along our journey, and then we are constantly growing and evolving. And that's the best thing about this journey for me. It's like doing everything that I used to do not drinking, it's like a whole new experience. I mean, it's just like, there is just so much more richness of life available because I'm 100% in my body. I'm 100% in my senses, and there's nothing else that's dictating that. I mean, of course I have old habitual belief patterns that I need to clean up from other things, but it's like, there's not this substance that I have to like plan my life around. It was just it just got to be so annoying. And that's really when people come to me, is when what they're experiencing, what I call alcohol exhaustion, is like, they're not necessarily drinking all day, but they're just thinking about it all the time because they are drinking, but they really want to change it. And so it's just kind of always on their mind. And then it's like, am I going to drink tonight? Well, what am I going to drink? And it gets to this place where it's like, seriously, this one little liquid beverage in a glass is taking up my entire life. And like, I can't even focus on what's really important to me. And it doesn't have to be that you're rock bottom. It doesn't have to be anything. Again, it's just knowing that you want to change and you're in a rut, but you just aren't quite sure how to get there. And, the subconscious is a dark, deep place sometimes that's hard to navigate on our own when we don't have the tools. So
totally, when we don't know what questions to ask ourselves, or we don't have someone to witness us in those limiting thought patterns. I'll also just add, one of the fun things about not being a drinker is you never have to take a lift home from a place. You can drive yourself to the concert and drive yourself home. Like the feeling of like getting to hang out with my friends and then just drive yourself home, of like, you're totally fine. There's no question. There's so like great. No chance you can't. I just love that part, because you want to be safe. You don't want to drive drunk. And even as a drinker, you're like trying to navigate that. Am I good? Am I not good? And knowing you're good all the time is like a really fun aspect of it.
It's so good. I know. I love the like evening rituals too, of just like things I didn't do, like washing my face at night and getting ready for bed and having, being able to read a little bit or write something, just not passing out every night. And there's all of this one time I had a client that told me she felt like she was aging backwards. It was just like little things, little self-care rituals that, you know, we kind of start to do for ourselves again when we're just more present with time. We have so much more time back too.
Yeah.
And I really think that's powerful.
It really is. And yeah, I mean, probably if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't turned it off yet, you want more of that kind of self-care and that ritual and that practice in your life too. So I'm sure there are people tuning in who are like, yeah, I kind of want that. And I think it would be easier to do it with support. What are the ways that people can come to work with you, and what's the best place for people to reach you?
Yes, I would love to tell you. Well, there's a few ways. I work exclusively one-on-one with women, but I do have a podcast called Stop Drinking and Start Living. And the information on there is useful to anyone, no matter how you identify. And I also have a free training that is solid gold on my website, marywagstaffcoach.com. And when you go on there, it'll just pop up at you, get the free training. And the free training is a little bit about what I talked about earlier, called my process that I call the 5 shifts of shifting from one perspective to another. And I also explore the 5 myths of how we think we want to change a habit and what we do to change the habit that's really not useful at all. And it's not really efficient, so that you can just kind of stop doing those, because a lot of it is a little bit of wasting your time. So there's a ton of information in there. And then all of the information about my coaching and everything is also on the website. So
awesome. We will put the link, Mary Wagstaff Coaching, in the show notes of this episode. But it is pretty much spelled the way you think that it's spelled, which is so nice.
Yes.
Having a name like Mandelberg, I appreciate a phonetically spelled name very much.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. So I like to ask this question at the end of the episode. You've already shared so much wisdom and magic, and I feel like it's really clear that you have an understanding and awareness of your expertise that is like powerful and super grounded. And I really appreciate that about you. And you've shared so much wisdom, but are there any last words of wisdom you want to leave people with?
Oh, goodness. Yes, humans move in cycles and rhythms. And I think it's just important to remember that your emotions don't last. And just like the phases of the moon and the cycles of the seasons, we too are just as much part of nature. So just as much as, you know, the moon waxes and wanes, we also too do that in our life. And to just really honor those natural rhythms. And I find that alcohol just kind of keeps us in that like endless summer mode all the time, which is just not honoring what this experience is about and some of the subtleties of being in our autumn, being in our winter, right? It's like we can't have spring without winter. So slowing down, being in the subtlety of like drinking in life. And when we can understand that we too are part of nature and not trying to override that, I also think that some of the more mundane things in life can become more magical.
It's true. Awesome. Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And thank you everyone out there for listening. Hopefully this was helpful. Yeah, share it with a friend who you think might enjoy this conversation and this episode. It doesn't have to be, hey, I think you drink too much, listen to this show. But like, hey, this is a conversation I'm getting into, and, you know, what do you think about this? Yeah, I'm definitely going to share this episode with a few of my friends who I've had conversations with about, you know, the shift from being a party girl to being something different and maybe more than that.
Yeah,
which is
absolutely. And you just don't have to stop partying either.
No, you don't.
You know?
I still go to Burning Man. Yeah, I just did my first Burning Man without alcohol after, I mean, my, like, actually, I'm really actually done with alcohol happened around, you know, during the pandemic. So going to Burning Man for the first time without alcohol, oh my God, it was such a different experience. I was so much happier. I was so much more myself. I had so much less like fear of missing out with other people. I was just like doing my thing in my zone and just feeling so like full of life and just lit the whole time. So it was fun to be in that crazy party environment and still not feeling tempted by it at all and just feeling so good. So it's fun. I recommend it. And you don't have to do it alone. You could have powerful support by someone like Mary. So thanks for listening to the show. Thank you again, Mary, for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll catch y'all next time. Whatever happens, keep asking big questions and taking bold action because you are here for a reason.